Hey everyone, it's been a really long time since my last podcast, about 6 months, and that means I've gone overseas, I've come back, we've had Christmas, New Year's, and we're already like a quarter of the way into 2026. So I have quite a few new finished objects to share, some works in progress, a couple of acquisitions, and just some general life updates. So grab something to work on and let's get stuck into it. We'll kick off with finished objects, and a couple of these have already been shown in my yearly recap video, so I'll just quickly touch on those. So we'll start off with these Halloween socks. I made these way back last year on my 3D printed sock knitting machine. I had a heap of fun making them and learnt a lot about how to use the machine. These are made out of Schackenmeyer Regia yarn, which is self-striping. I think this colour is called Marcy, and it's purple, orange, navy blue and white. I really like the pattern on these. I did have a bit of trouble getting these dots to kind of line up in a sensible way, so they're more of like a Fair Isle inspired sock, but up close they don't look quite right. I did an afterthought heel, and I used some over-dyed yarn, scrap yarn for the heel and toe. And despite these having existed for 6 months, I have basically barely worn them, and that's partially because I finished them a little bit late for Halloween, but also it's because they're really uncomfortable. For some reason, this yarn feels okay to hand, but it does not feel great on my feet. It's very, very itchy. So I think that means these are going to have to be given away to someone with slightly less sensitive feet than me, or I'll use them as Halloween decoration. So these are my Halloween socks. My next finished object I don't actually have with me because I made it as a gift for a friend. When I went overseas, one of my friends let me stay with her, and so in return I made her a little skinny triangle scarf as a thank you present. I made it using knitting for olive merino and soft silk mohair held together, which I bought at the flagship Knitting for Olive store in Copenhagen. I made this little project in about a week. I mostly knit it during my train journeys from Denmark to Sweden and back, and then between Edinburgh and London, but also a couple of hours in the evenings. And to be honest, I made this mostly from memory. I've made myself a couple of these scarves before, but I definitely follow the Simple Thing pattern by Melina Brell. But I modified it just a little bit to look a little more like PetiteKnit's Sophie scarf, and that means reducing the increase rate to be around every 8 rows to create a longer, skinnier scarf, and also just modifying the cast on slightly. So instead of having a rounded tip, it has kind of a pointy tip, more like the Sophie scarf. But otherwise, this is a very simple garter stitch scarf. I love this yarn combination. It's very soft, but it is hand wash only, so you need to make sure if you're giving it as a gift that you let the recipient know and that they're trustworthy not to put it in the wash. But she loves it. I think the colour is spot on for my friend and her personality and her style, and I had a lot of fun making it. It was a great travel project, just really, really small, don't have to follow any complicated patterns, and yeah, love this little blue scarf. Alright, my third finished object are these, which I'm wearing. Striped slippers. I made a whole video about these felted slippers and the saga that it was to create them. These are V3. It took me 3 tries to get these right, but finally I have some of my own striped felted slippers like everybody was making last year, and I am finally able to start wearing them myself because the weather has cooled down here in Australia. These are made from a bunch of different scrap yarns all held together, and they were knit kind of like a sock, just in one piece, no seaming. And I actually didn't follow a pattern for these. I recreated the viral sailor slipper pattern from sight. It did not go particularly smoothly, but eventually I got there, and in my video I share my pattern for how I recreated these. Looking forward to getting more wear out of these now that it's autumn, and even some of my friends are interested in making their own. Next up, I have another pair of socks that were knit on my 3D printed sock knitting machine. These are made from West Yorkshire Spinners Signature Solids in this lovely kind of purpley grey colour. I picked this up while I was overseas, and these have been made as a gift for my mum. They're pretty much just a vanilla sock pattern. I did a 2x2 rib cuff, I did another afterthought heel, and as you can see I've still got some ends to weave in. These were a great way to test out all the skills I learnt making my Halloween socks on the machine, and these went a lot more smoothly since I eased up the tension a little bit. I love how consistent the stitches look on these machine knit socks, and it makes gift knitting socks just a lot more reasonable. I did make these for my mum for her birthday, which was at the end of the year, so they are very, very late. I'm going to finish weaving in these ends right now and then give them to her. But there's not much else to say about these except the yarn is very soft and it feels quite durable, so I would recommend this for socks definitely in the future. I don't know if it's easy to get this yarn in Australia. I think there might be a couple of places that sell it online that I could grab it from. But I picked this yarn up, I believe, in Edinburgh at Ginger Twist Studio. And my final finished object for the last 6 months was another Jason's Cashmere hat, which I've made before. It's a cabled beanie pattern, but this time I actually made it as a gift for a 1-year-old. It was a family member's birthday, and so I took the pattern and modified it just a little bit. So I made this beanie with a stitch count of 84 stitches, which is about, I think, 12 stitches fewer than the pattern. And I did 1 fewer cable repeat than instructed. So the hat is like 10 or 20% smaller than the adult size. But it is a really stretchy beanie, so it comes out looking really, really small. It's got ribs and cables in it, so that helps it to shrink down. This child's going to be from about 1 to 1.5 years old during the cold months, so I made it a little bit big in the hopes that he could fit into it at the end of the year and maybe into next year as well. I made this out of Fiddlesticks Pepin 10, which is a yarn I've used plenty of times before. It is a superwash yarn, very, very soft and squishy, comes in some nice colours. I made this in a warm orange tone, and it's machine washable, which is really important, I think, for baby things. And I whipped this up super quickly, again in less than a week. With having so few stitches, it really comes together really fast. I took this away on a work weekend trip and kind of got it done between all the other activities I was doing. He looks super cute in the beanie, and I hope it's an heirloom piece that they can hold on to for a long time. Alright, those are all my finished objects. I haven't been doing a lot of knitting over the summer months. I've been super busy. I've been being really social, been going out and doing dancing and trivia and swimming and having a lot of fun. Also been pretty sidetracked by my work, but I am really looking forward to getting back into knitting a little bit more over autumn. And that leads me to my works in progress. This is a long-standing work in progress, which I also showed on my podcast 6 months ago. This is my Ophelia blouse, a design by Tamara Jordan, also known as Starcross Knits, and it is almost done. I have completed the back, the shoulders, the V-neck, the body, the button band, the hem, and I am just finishing off these little baby cap sleeves now, and then I've got to do lace on those, and then they're done. Oh, of course, the buttons as well. This is a project I started in anticipation of the warmer months, and of course I've missed the boat for that one, so maybe I'll layer it over some turtlenecks for winter. I love this pattern for many reasons. I find it very well written. I really like the fine gauge. This is a fingering weight pattern, and I just think that's really nice on the hands. I think the fit's going to be great on me. I'm knitting a size 3, and I love knitting lace, so I found all these lace details really, really nice. It's they kind of roll up, so it looks like it's not finished. It is finished. There's lace on all these edges here. This is an English mesh lace stitch. The yarn I use for this project is Hedgehog Fibers sock yarn in the colour Spell, and I love the colour. I get a lot of compliments on it when I work on this at my craft nights. I love the feeling of the yarn, but my big complaint is actually not to do with the yarn, it's to do with the way it came to me. So I bought this secondhand from a lady on Facebook Marketplace, and clearly she had used the yarn before, which is fine, but it meant that it had been cut up into a lot of short lengths and then wound into balls, so I didn't realise, but I keep running into surprise ends. So I probably have about 40 ends on this so far to weave in, and I'm really not looking forward to it. And then more recently, I've gotten down to a ball of yarn, which I realised had been wound 2 strands held together, and I'm only knitting with 1 strand. So I initially started to just try to knit from it by peeling the 2 pieces apart and just working with 1. And of course that ended up with a massive, massive tangle, which took me a long time to undo. I ended up cutting the yarn out of frustration. So now I've had to separate the yarns, wind 1 onto my yarn winder and wind 1 by hand, and do that before I start knitting with it. So there's just been a lot of yarn management that I wasn't expecting for this project, and that's part of the reason it's taken me so long, because I don't feel like untangling yarn, I feel like knitting. But I think I'm pretty much through that now, and I'm so close to the end. I just need to power through and then have probably like a whole day of weaving in ends, and then I'm finished with this project. So hopefully the next time you see this, it will be done. I have been filming a vlog throughout the whole process, so you'll get to see all this in great detail very soon. And my second newer project, which you won't have seen before, is my tangent sweater. This is designed by Engineering Loops Knitwear, aka Baird. And this is a oversized, drop-shouldered, all-over cabled jumper. As you can see, the cables are a little unusual. They are not the typical double helix or antler style, very fine cables. They are these large, infrequent cables that are evenly spaced all over the jumper, and it creates a kind of puckered, textured fabric which looks like ripples and waves, which is really cool. And I find it so addictive to knit because you just want to get to the next cable repeat. It's also pretty easy to memorize, and it's something you can knit while you're watching TV, and you don't really have to pay close attention to the cables like you would on a really detailed, intricate pattern. I finished the back panel and I am now working on one of the shoulders. I have had a little bit of trouble with this pattern just because of the way it's written. It's not really my preferred style. It's all written out kind of long form, and there's a lot of checking and rereading lines, and I find myself getting a little bit lost, so I've made a couple of errors. But I think once I'm through the rest of this yoke and I'm on to joining in the round and just knitting the body, this is going to be a really cruisy project. And it goes without saying that one of the best parts of this is of course the colour and the yarn. I'm knitting this in one of my very favourite yarns, which is Sandnesgarn's Peer Gynt. This is in the colour 926 and it's a super hot red. I love the toothy feel of this, 100% Norwegian wool, and I've got heaps of this, so hopefully I'm going to have some left over so I can make some matching accessories. I'm knitting this in a size medium, which is I think the 4th size, so hopefully that'll get me a nice oversized jumper. And the only real thinking left to do with this is I still need to do a neckline, and I'm deciding whether to do a folded neck or a mock neck. I don't have any folded neck jumpers, and it was on my last year's bingo card to learn how to do it, so I'm leaning towards that one, but let me know what kind of collar you would put on this jumper yourself. I hope the next time I check in with you guys on this, it is much closer to being complete, but I have also been filming a vlog of this in the background, so you will get to see the whole process regardless. Alright, let's move on to acquisitions. I did buy some yarn at a local craft de-stash event about 6 months ago, and that is this Filatura di Crosa luxury yarn, which is a silk yarn. It's in this beautiful brown colour, a nice cool toned brown. And it has a wonderful drape and shine, and I think it will make a beautiful top. This is in the shade 38, and I got, I believe, 300 grams of it here for $5. And because I was on a no-buy last year, I didn't really buy much yarn until I went on my trip overseas. I bought so much when I was there that I think it needs its own separate video. I also want to talk about the different stores that I visited and whether I'd recommend them or not, and the kinds of yarn they sold, so that if you're planning a trip to Europe, and specifically the countries that I visited, which was England, Scotland, Denmark, Sweden, as well as Iceland, you can decide whether you want to visit these stores or not. But I don't want to leave you hanging too much, so I did bring along just some examples of what I bought to give you a taste, so you can look forward to my video about it. Here is some West Yorkshire spinners. I also, of course, got some knitting for Olive here. And here's just one of the yarns. I got it at a different store in Denmark, Lang Cloud, as well as many more. So I hope that whets your appetite and you can look forward to a video all about my European yarn shopping soon. And it was my birthday very recently, and my lovely family bought me 2 knitting books that I asked for. So these are also technically an acquisition. I got the Knitting for Olive pattern book, as well as the Rose Knitwear Alice Hoyle pattern book. And these are just 2 beautiful big tomes with heaps and heaps of patterns in them. Very different styles though. The Knitting for Olive patterns are very much Scandinavian. They are very classic and beautiful and feminine. There are lots of lace and baby knits and neutral colours and all this lovely stuff. A lot of yarns held together with mohair. And I just find this so inspiring. There are a few patterns in here that I want to make, especially since there is going to be a new baby born into my family very soon. I think I'm going to be making them a couple of Knitting for Olive patterns, since they kind of specialise in that kind of children's knitwear. I'm arguably more excited about my Rose Knitwear book, however. This is some of the coolest pattern designs I've ever seen. I think that Alice has done a wonderful job in really modernising a lot of designs, or leaning into what's trendy. So you can see some on the back cover here. She has a wonderful way of blending contrasting yarns together in these interesting textured slip stitch fabrics and creating super cool trendy pieces which are multicolored and make use of scrap yarn. I'll just try to flick through. It's a little hard to flick through a hardcover. But here's just some of the stuff in this book. And I really appreciate all the technique advice. Look at these mittens. I want to make these mittens so badly. I appreciate all the technique advice and a lot of great diagrams, wonderful pictures, beautiful color choices, and some kind of wacky, trendy things which I'm excited to make and wear. That is the book Knit by Alice Hoyle. So as I mentioned, my plans are to make a couple of winter accessories soon. Probably those static mittens in a black and white combination, some baby knits. I am going to be reviving my zigzag crochet blanket, which you guys haven't seen for a while. This is just something I work on the couch at home, and since it's getting colder now, it's a perfect time to keep working on it. And then I might also dip back into my book club cardigan, which is the project that will never die. An extremely cabled V-neck cardigan, which I started as part of a knit-along a long time ago now, and I am slowly working through it. Each row takes a long time, but I'm hoping that maybe this year will be the year that I finish this project. So I think that covers just about everything. Thanks for sticking with me while knitting took a little bit of a backseat over the warmer months. I am, however, really looking forward to getting a little bit more into it, especially as a tool to keep myself sane during the winter months while the sun sets so early. It's definitely one of the things I rely on to keep the seasonal depression at bay. And I did just want to finish off on a fun personal note. This year I had a goal of becoming a blood donor, and I have finally succeeded. At the beginning of January, I tried to make my first blood donation as a person who has been very, very afraid of needles, injections, vaccinations, blood donations pretty much my whole life. Something that I really wanted to try and overcome. The January donation did not go super smoothly. I was at the end of a very long, very tough day. I hadn't eaten properly and I was on my own, and I did not make it the whole way through. They had to stop part way. So I tried again just recently, and I'm very proud to say I've made it all the way through my blood donation. It's really fun here. You get a text telling you when and where your blood gets used. So my blood has been sent to a hospital somewhere, and that's a really good feeling. So I hope to keep that up. You can donate every 3 months. And if you're someone who's eligible to donate but you've never tried it, I really recommend giving it a go, and let me know how you get on. That's it. Any questions about anything, as always, please comment. I'll reply to you soon. And as I said, I have a lot of vlogs cooking in the background, so I will be posting those shortly, and I really look forward to seeing you then. Bye!